visible. The chair now recognizes the young lady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much for your leadership. To the Secretary, it's good to see you again. We've worked together before. My time is short. My questions, I will try to be as short as possible if your answers could be likewise. I'm outraged about the shootings in Atlanta. Thank you for starting out. We offer our deepest sympathy. 6 of those individuals seem to be Asian out of 8. What is the department going to be doing about, even though the investigation is not proceeded, what may be domestic terrorism or hateful acts, violent acts against communities like Asian Americans, which have seen a surge in hateful acts? Mr. Secretary, very quickly.
Congresswoman, it's nice to see you again as well. I won't comment on the tragedy of yesterday because it is under investigation, but we are intensely focused on the greatest threat that we face in the homeland from a terrorism perspective, as I mentioned at the outset, and that is domestic violent extremism, violence that is motivated by different ideologies, including ideologies of hate against particular social groups.
I appreciate it. I hope that we will focus on Asian Americans as we have done on other groups, and certainly we know that African Americans have been the target of white supremacy and white racism. Let me move quickly to the border and indicate to you, Mr. Secretary, that this administration has a border policy. I congratulate you for it. It is not a policy of putting children in cages, which we had to suffer for year after year on the Trump administration. There are no children in cages. So I would simply ask this. I applaud the utilization of FEMA, and I applaud the utilization of a policy. Can you succinctly say what that policy is as it relates to the border and your policy for moving children who are now moving to temporary sites like Midland and Dallas to a process where they can seek asylum and or go to their custodial representative in this country? Mr. Secretary?
Congresswoman, the border is secure and the border is not open. We are expelling under the CDC's public health authority in light of the pandemic, single individuals who arrive at the border. We are expelling families under that same public health authority, limited only by the capacity of Mexico to receive them. And we are not expelling children who arrive unaccompanied without a parent or legal guardian, and we are caring for their custody and their sheltering in HHS's responsibility to place them with sponsors so that they can proceed with their immigration proceedings and their claims for humanitarian relief under the laws of this country in a safe and orderly way.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And as it relates to COVID-19, our state has always been a hotspot, Texas. Let me quickly cite legislation that I have, a COVID Delivery Act of 2020 and 2021. Just want to emphasize the value of FEMA. I want to acknowledge Tony Robinson, Region 6 Administrator, and the Texas Department of Emergency Management. They've been working beautifully, but I want to emphasize that I think FEMA can stand up and do more as relates to monitoring shipments. I think they can do more by establishing an app that would help working with HHS to sort of monitor the vaccines as they're coming forward. And so I just want to be able to work with you on ideas of how FEMA can be more effective in the COVID-19 fight. Would you work with me on that?
I most certainly will, and I appreciate the recommendation and the request.
Finally, we are all aware of the horrible breach that came about through solar winds, and you mentioned it in your in your presentation. So I'd really like you to answer the question regarding the importance of having shared vulnerabilities, meaning that we have a system, and I, of course, have legislation, but I want to just focus on the concept of making sure that we know the private vulnerabilities and the public vulnerabilities and that they're shared under the umbrella of system. Would you comment on that? We need to know the vulnerabilities so that we can begin to address the vulnerabilities. We can't have that kind of major breach.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for that question because it returns to a statement that I made at the very outset, and that is that the department is a department of partnerships. And the public-private partnership is especially important in enhancing our nation's cybersecurity. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, within the Department of Homeland Security, is on point for enhancing that partnership. And critically important to that partnership is the sharing of information both by the private sector and the federal government. By understanding the vulnerabilities, by the attacks that individual organizations suffer, by learning from them collectively, we will enhance our nation's cybersecurity, and that is one of our critical mission sets.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for the work of the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. Look forward to working with you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.